Welcome to day 5 of 5 days of Defiance. For those of you who have been following along, you're hopefully in the rhythm and ready to conclude. Those of you who are just joining spontaneously, this is the 5th day in a 5-day sequence of free offerings that I've been holding this week through my live stream here. I've also been transferring them to my YouTube channel and also posting them as a YouTube link in a group called 5 Days of Defiance. So you can rewatch in your own leisure. And you can find them on my thread as well. So the reason for all of this is that cultivating stability internally obviously assists when the outside is wobbling. And working a self-cultivated truth is an interesting task in a society which is beset by so many stories and opinions. The shaking of that community, which is an intrinsic part of our sense of belonging. Like we want to be a part of community, and various controlling factors devised a thing called society, which was a much more mechanical, financial, cosmetic, industrial, didactic form of community, which could be controlled through different things that we ended up leaning on. And this is a really key part of my philosophy. And it is my philosophy that I want to hand across during these 5 days, and also practical ways to implement it, with the simple intention being that you are either reminded of your own tools, which I think ultimately what this all is leading to, or equipped with a few new perspectives, because we all hold a different way in to that singular actuality of what is. And I've found that my particular way in is sustainable because I've been doing this for a long time, and I tend to feel good most days, and I tend to have access to my creativity, and I tend to adapt and adjust and have free time at the same time, have an ongoing path of learning. And I tend to also fluctuate between a deep connection, feeling like I'm part of something, but also quite a peaceful sense of being alone and sovereign on the way through, all of which I quite enjoy. And so I figure if I enjoy it, I hope to pass some of that joy on to equip people who may have been shaken or bruised, battered, or shrunken by the world events, which have been happening and continue to happen. And I think it's an ongoing path, this path of change, this convulsion, whether it be economic, political, environmental, or personal. These things continue to change. And maybe it was just society that told us that things didn't change. Maybe it was just society that told us to have a conservative norm, that we just conserve what we are familiar with, and that can perpetuate as long as we have enough control. And that, I think, is just uninformed. I don't think that empires do just sustain. They rise and they fall. I don't think that climates and environments, I don't think that ideologies, that heroes, all these sort of things, they don't just keep going. Nature recycles itself. It turns into compost, and the dying feed the newborns. And how beautiful it is that we've evolved beyond very archaic means of connection, control, communication, creation in just a few hundred years. And the last few hundred years have also been a tool of colonization. So I really am looking forward to those things crumbling away and something more justful, full of justice, more sentient, more in harmony with nature. Hopefully that is the seed that grows through the compost of what is currently dying. So today is a little bit about death. I'm calling this a eulogy of hope. And I wanted to drop us into quite a reflective, meditative process of planning and even starting to pen our own eulogy. I do have a future plan of how to sort of collect these and have this beautiful living graveyard, but that's a topic for another day. Even if you don't link up with me or this doesn't become a part of it, I'd like you to hold this artifact, a summary of your reflection and intention about life. And allow death to be an inspiration for life, not to be a morbid fascination or something that we are freezing and shrinking away trying to avoid, but instead just a reminder of our mortality and thinking, but I'm not there yet. And what a privilege, a luxury to be here out of the grave, thinking of this thing that may be said and presented. And I think there's this beautiful generosity that comes when we don't have to cling to our own life anymore. When we are beyond the grave, I feel we probably just want to pour it back to the living, unequivocally, unconditional love, wisdom. And to be a channel for that now, what a beautiful way to learn from our future self. So I'm going to drop us in with a little bit of embodiment. And then I'm going to give us a point of reference to start writing this thing and reflecting what we might want to say and how that perspective might revivify our current livingness. And then I'm going to play some sound or some music and allow you to kind of take yourself through the process of starting to write that item. And then we'll close. We'll close these 5 days of defiance. And I hope they have been defiant in as much as resisting the seduction of the illusion, which is obsessing us with our demise, which is separating us, segregating, which is doing a very good job from a number of angles. And for whatever reason, we can have these conspiratorial ideas. And I've got no problem with the conspiracies. I think that the word itself is to, well, conspire, like the word inspiration, respiration, the spirit, the breath, the life force, and con is together. So if we breathe together, if we think together, if we inspire together, I mean, that's kind of what we do in a number of areas of life. And it's really interesting when we have these buzzwords, these taboos, these electric fences we set up around. It's like, oh no, just label it with this conspiracy theory or misinformation or whatever it is. And we obligingly avoid it. It's almost like we don't want to be identified with that thing, that ism or that ist. I'm not this, whatever, political persuasion or religious ideology devotee. And that in itself would be a travesty, to avoid the potential of learning and exposure to things which are not yourself for fear of becoming them. And I guess this is also relating to the eulogy. Let's not fear death and not expose ourselves to the learning in death for fear of dying. Because I think it's actually quite the opposite. When we stop focusing on resistance, our life can go elsewhere. We don't have to manifest that thing that we've been so adamant we need to avoid. And we went through a process, I think it was day 2, very much focused on that. So these tools of segregation, they are seductive. They are drawing us in. And that's why I think transmissions like this is so important, because it takes our attention for a moment and it aligns us in a new direction. And that's also why I think art is so important. And please do reference yesterday, day 4, which is all about the art of defiance, where we can come into this beauty way. We can follow the artistry of our heart. We can speak of our innocence from the day before. And we can allow our structure and our discipline from the day before that to have this life force flow from us into a new direction. And if it is life-giving, that process is sustainable. We can continue to go through this, not just heal what has happened over the last few months, but actually fuel what is to come for the coming months. Because I don't think we're through this yet. And will we ever be through life? As we know, it's the journey, not the destination. This is a process of coming to terms with the actual fluctuation in life and how these familiar things will actually come into view and then leave even quicker as the exponential change quickens. I think that things are changing more rapidly because we have more ports of exchange. Imagine if you had maybe a few months to pass on a message by letter or by traveling envoy. It would take a while for a rumor or an idea or a culture to shift. However, now we can go live at the press of a button. And so all of the rise and fall of these empires, of these ideologies, of these truths collectively held will come into view, be, go through the combustion chamber and the metabolism of the human experience, and then be discarded like waste, which a lot of it is. So the change is just going to keep coming at a rapid pace. And so it is in the surrendered, it is in the way of the clown, it is in the void space, the meditative space, it is in flow, in the jazz of life that I think we can then keep up. And it doesn't feel like we're trying to keep up with life, but we're in the flow. It's effortless. It's like the surfer is not trying to keep up with the wave. If they get the right moment, they're carried by the wave. You can be fed by the change. You can be buoyed by it. It can be a tool of liberation. It can be the thing that you're grateful broke away, the unseen yokes and manacles and shackles that you thought was your bracelets and jewelry that you used to champion, that restrictive relationship or job, or the rightness of your particular lens that you looked at things through, that you would defend to the death because you identified it as it. And then as those binoculars or telescope or microscope was removed from your eyes and the entire horizon came into view, and how beautiful and wow, open. You're so grateful you lost that possession that you really just fought tooth and nail to protect, as is so many of the identities and familiarities and comforts that we now mourn the loss of. Yeah. So let's now drop in. If you are here, then let's continue. Starting off with our body, allowing our breath to lead us into our belly, getting a sense of time slowing down, getting a sense of evaporation of energy from the back of the head, a relieving of the shoulders back and open, heart coming forward, dropping down through your sit bones, down through your legs and feet into the earth. Allowing that breath to be like drinking the life force that passes through your throat and your heart on the way to the lungs. Breathing down into the belly as well, allowing it to be an internal massage that expands you. Allowing the softness of release of some kind of sound, hum or sigh on the exhale. Allow the undulation of secondary animation as one part of your body leads to the rippling or movement of another part of the body. Feel the music of this ritual. Feel the weirdness too. Feel the simultaneous connection with ancestral patterns within your DNA, and at the same time, something new. This can seem like something, but not be it. It can be inspired by something else, but not necessarily be a defamation or desecration of what was. This is you, anew, breathing in and allowing the poetry of your sensations to weave a poem through your body, through tingles. So maybe brushing your fingers across the surface of your skin gently. Sometimes it is yin, the light, soft feather touch that can activate a deep, deep change. We don't always have to have chains and hammers and guns and loud voices and many, many piled papers of law to evolve as a culture. A culture like that in a petri dish sometimes just needs a little single ingredient to be added in, and everything comes in and starts to work on it, to eat it, to metabolize it. The enzymes click in, things start to mutate. You don't have to do the whole thing yourself. Having your hands massage any tension in your face. Feeling also down into the connecting points, the joints, the tendons. Opening out the hands in surrender. Feeling the spine, convex and concave. forward and back, side to side. Fun, good. Rubbing your feet together if you're barefoot, and if not, maybe get barefoot, rubbing your hands together, clapping and tapping and qigong to activate with intention, looking at your body as well. Where attention goes, energy flows. Shaking it up, feeling that fizzy goodness, the soda of the soma, like bubbly. A lot of us as water, we're influenced by rippling ideas and sounds and breath. Intention coupled with action. Breath, sound, and movement. All of these foundational tools, many of us know already. So hopefully you're taking this time just to reacquaint you with your own daily practice. Let's have some sound happening. Can you be soft in the throat, open in the heart, supportive from the diaphragm? One more. Swallow the dream seed. So I'd like us to just take this kind of lightly activated body and settle into what feels like a central plumb line coming down your spine towards your tailbone, and then spilling as though your whole body melts in and waters the earth below you, through the root, and feel the space of time. Feel the days, months, years ahead of you and behind you, and your orientation point in that time sequence, the space-time continuum. And feel as you breathe in, you're expanding into that space like an inflating balloon. And as you exhale, you're expanding into the space, you're blowing into it. So it's expanding and expanding. It's expanding and expanding. Love leads to love. Life leads to life. That's the thing that our mind can't get around, is how can things just keep getting better? How can things keep growing? How can death and a breakup and losing a job and losing a possession not equal the end? That is the infinite cycle. And we just have to give into all of the helping hands of the external rather than controlling from the internal and the self-serving and the one perspective, to soften and allow all the different component parts to be added to the soup, and then we drink together, taking it in, feeling nourished simply by air, and sometimes nourished by what you're not eating. Sometimes when I fast or I give things away, I feel more enriched, because it is that scarcity of holding so tightly and needing that makes us feel ravenous. It's like, when you're sick and how nice it feels to just not be sick, just to be quote unquote normal, and it's blissful. Sometimes we forget that. And I think this culture of acquisition, of acquiring, of stacking up, of gaining is actually, there's a trick in that. I think it's clogging the pores. It's getting in the way of the openness of the channel of life by owning all these things and protecting all these things and eating all these things and wearing all these things and guarding and locking them away and focusing and worrying about the loss of all these things. Like, it's a very good way to impose yourself between a person and life, which is given freely, continually, in abundance, in the volume that we could never actually use. Like, you can't breathe all of the sky, you can't eat all the food, you can't have sex with all of the lovers. There's too much actually on this earth. And so what a intricate illusion to make us think that we're lacking. In emergencies, particularly, our true generosity comes out. But it's also coming away from that idea of emergency and urgency to what is actually vital and important, because often we're tending to what is so urgent, and yet we forget the signature of our soul. We forget the eulogy. We forget the life book that we are authoring with our days. And so many of these things would just be neither here nor there. We honestly wouldn't care if we finished that particular assignment or if we got that particular award. You know, so many of these things we obsess over would really not even be thought of on our deathbed. But there possibly are certain things, certain gifts you'd like to add to the human archive, certain sacred sites you like to visit, certain words you like to speak to those you love, certain bizarre sculptures or books or dances or events or meals that you've dreamt and think, wouldn't it be cool if that existed? Elizabeth Gilbert talks about the relationship between the creator and the idea and how they could be seen as like these sprites or these ghosts, these potentials that want to be birthed through you, and only you hold them for now. I've also heard it said that the graveyard is the richest place on the earth because of all of the ideas which are buried undone by the people in the coffins. So just feeling not like an urgency or a panic, but just a soft timeliness of this particular session, a relief that you're slowing down to be in the discomfort of what you haven't done and on the fact that you can now do it and are calling yourself into it, both equally uncomfortable. Sometimes I call open world theater the theater of discomfort. And I think if there's one single thing I've learned most from life, in amongst all the improvisation and play, it's simply don't avoid. Because often the pain we fear is actually held up in the avoidance. The actual experience of being in the cold water or getting the piercing or having the uncomfortable conversation, whatever it is, that's actually liberating. And the actual incarceration is in our lack of integrity and compromise when we do all we can to avoid that experience. Ironically, giving ourselves the experience we're trying to avoid through the avoidance itself. Paradox, as is life. So feel not an urgency or panic about making this worthwhile, this life you're living, but just a realization that we are slowly peeling away like an onion skin layer, all of the insulation, all of the external imposition, which we are now delegating responsibility to. I'm not sure if you've had relief, but I actually really liked the lockdown because I got to just sit put for a while and not have to be social. And I just got to reflect and focus. But in many ways, I externalized the responsibility of like the government locking me down in order to just sit and focus. And I could have done that myself. So how many times are we delegating to an external point of responsibility? Are you waiting for your friend to tell you you're in an unhealthy relationship, or you're waiting for someone to do something so horrible that you can finally face and say the word that you were meaning to say all this time? And I think both are important, the doing and the not doing. Are you not doing something that you know you want to or would be beautiful to do? Or are you doing something you know it would be more beautiful just to leave space for in a silence? And my personal aspiration would be to dissolve as much obsession and addiction to my identity and ego as possible. And I see it in others, so it is in myself. I'm very aware of the idea of projection and mirror theory. But that's one of the things that really aggravates me, is where I feel someone is missing out on the opportunity of the moment because they're so self-obsessed and putting themselves in it. They are in the experience already. They don't have to verify by telling others that they're in it. So once again, I know I must do that myself. Softening, breath in, breath out. So in a moment, I'm going to put on a sound. It's a beautiful sonic transmission by a group called, I believe it's Children of the Drone. Yes. And this particular song is from the Free Music Archive, which I regularly reference because it's beautifully copyright free music given out to the community for any use as long as you attribute who it's from. So this is from Children of the Drone. And this particular song is untitled, which is fitting for this idea of emptiness. And as we listen to it together, my invitation for you is to go through a process of this. Step one, feel into your childlike self looking forward at your life with what I hope was a hopeful lens, which I hope felt like a lot of room to grow, which I hope had a lot of joy at the unknown, all the different people that you would meet, all the places you'd go, all the food you'd eat, all the people you would love, all the experiences you'd have. Like as children, we actually relish, I believe, the mystery, because that is the excitement, like Christmas Day or some kind of gift. It's like, I don't know where I'm going to go, who I'm going to be. My body's going to change. Wow. You know, the butterfly. Worm would fly. Worm would fly. We are worms that would fly. We are humans without wings. We are aspiring angels. And as children, we're okay with being the worm, the grub, the larvae. And yet as adults, somehow we beat ourselves up about not being angels yet. But what was it like to be a child? And I don't know your childhood, but what was it like to be in a time when looking forward, there was possibilities and hope and some kind of confidence, looking for a time when you were sure something great was going to happen, or you just knew a big change would happen? Because I think that is the elixir of youth. That is the wishing well that we can drink from and fills us up with a future to know that something is possible, that something can change and be completely different. And sometimes that open freedom, that's the idea of open world theater. Life is wild. There's actually so much permission. You could literally do anything. Sure, you might end up in jail, or you might end up in a new country with a new job, or you might end up with new burdens and debts. Like, I don't know. But the point is, you can do it. If you're under a self-illusion that you can't, you're starting to equate the consequence with some kind of inhibition about the doingness. You just have to live with the consequence of what you do, and then you can do literally anything. Anything. And some anythings lead to more productive or sustainable consequences. And that is something to definitely fine tune. Like, I don't want all my friends and loved ones to end up in jail or dead. Like, that would be very finite, and it would end the potential growth for this particular life cycle very quickly. So instead, it's like, what is vivacious? What allows a lot of other component parts into your ecosystem, new people, new ideas, money, and art, and environment? For me, that's life. And so we all have to have our different priorities and our value systems. For me, my value system aligns around yes, open, and growth, expansion, learning, lightness. And by lightness, I don't mean light and dark, that dark is bad, but I mean the esoteric, intangible tendrils that connect everything. Because heaviness can be finite and distinct, and it can crack and break if you try to change it. But lightness, it's like breath, it's like music. It just connects, and it can change and riff. That for me is part of life, and it's how I feel and how I think when I'm most aligned. And it's what I would consider my higher self, the superhuman, the ignited, the cognition point of inspiration and eureka, euphoria, the entheogenic nature, meaning like to connect you with God, of the elements of breath, of love, of future, of whatever it is for you. But that's what I align to. So point one on your eulogy template would be to orient to such a point where you're looking at life in such a way and ask, what are the things you knew, you just had a knowingness was going to happen? Because I think we can live with certainty in an uncertain world. We can't always know the exact consequence or response from the nature, but we can intend and do. And this is also a practice that I've been inspired by. I believe it's called Kaizen, Japanese practice of 1 minute a day, same action at the same time every day. And it's this discipline that shows up with a simplicity that regardless of all the other variables, at midday each day, I'm going to do a minute of breathing, whatever it is, some kind of stability in the chaos. So you can ordain an author if you give it priority. It's what we choose is important. I believe we all have the resources we need, whether it be money or otherwise. We actually do have what we need to focus and feed our particular path of passion, as long as we redefine what our basics are. Do you need to pay as much rent as you're paying? Do you need to have those subscriptions you have as like an energy leak? Do you need to support the people you're supporting? Do you need? As long as you know it's a choice, and that's beautiful, it's fine. You are totally free to put your energy and money and resources and time and love into that thing, as long as you don't feel then a victim to it, because then it's being a martyr. I would always go on the side of the trickster, where I move and I shift and I trust people with their own life, whether it be pleasure or pain. I let people to their own tragedy or victory. And then I move and I shift and I become what's needed. And I have learned the hard lesson that I also do break many of my vows, sacred promises. I will adapt and change. I'm not chained to a past knowing if the new knowing catches up to the new, fresh actuality and something new has to happen. And I'm sorry if I've let people down, but it's always an attempt to honor life. And life changes very quickly. Oh, yeah. So it's not even so much about forgiving self or other. It's about catching up to the ever-changing nature and the way it does break apart all of these things that we hold as safe, in order for the luxurious abundance of life to nurture everyone and reach everyone. It comes in through the cracks of what it broke. So that's the first part, is orienting to a place where you knew something was going to happen and write what that thing was. And it might be a new form. Maybe I knew I was going to go float down the Amazon. Cool. That exact form is what these tattoos mean, open form. It doesn't have to be the Amazon. You don't have to marry Susie or John. You don't have to become the world's sexiest person with an Oscar award for an amazing feature film acting role. But that speaks of an essence. And I do believe that essence can still exist in the new component parts of whatever life presents now. So it's kind of having the intention with certainty and audaciously going and bravely and innocently declaring with sincerity your intention, and then allowing life to respond, and then being grateful for what comes back, knowing that you honored, and it's in the attempt, it's in the trying, it's in the journey, it's in the aspiration. That is the demonstration of the beauty of humanity. Not doing the thing right, not having a polished album, not having the perfect sculpture, not having the chiseled abs, not being the richest person in the world. Like, that's done then. It's dead, it's stagnant, it's finite. And then what? Once you get there, there will be a new change and possibility. So being used to living in the possibility is also a huge part of this. Being okay with the uncertain and just sitting with the potential, not having to eat if you're hungry, not having to have sex if you're horny, not having to know if you don't know. Why are we trying to finish the game early? Why are we needing to channel the potential? Just live with the channel, because that hunger can become a poem. The eros can become a new business. It's potential. Awesome. That is the freedom. That is the opportunity before it's landed. Awesome. So that's only part one of the eulogy. Part two is in retrospect. So just imagine you're literally sitting there like a ghost with a microphone, hovering above your own grave with all your loved ones there. And what do you hope you can say? Reflect back from the future on a moment that has not yet happened. Something you do a year from now, or 2 or 3 or 10 years from now, that you hold as the zenith, the top point, the moment when it landed. And I want you to explain in this eulogy how it played out, remembering from the future what has not yet happened. We can't mourn the unborn. One of the 8 core human drives in this particular game theory I studied was that we fight hard to not lose what we have gained, but we don't always fight as hard to create what you have not yet gained. It's like, imagine, I'm not sure if you watched Back to the Future with that photo. I think it's Michael J. Fox with his parents or something like that, or girlfriend. And then this photo, the person starts to fade because they die. And he's like, no, this can't happen. So he does what he can because he lived with them. He loved them. He knew what it was like. They were born, they had their life. He was attached. He had something he had gained. And now he started to lose it. So he fought tooth and nail to make sure they didn't die. But imagine looking at that photo and it's just him. Any photo that you've ever looked at of yourself had some people that were not in it, some people you didn't meet across the street or across the planet, some people who are maybe never born or died before you got a chance to meet them, but you can't mourn them. They didn't exist in your universe yet. And that is all the dreams that are ahead of us. All these amazing things you could build, the companies or the charities, the families, the little, mud brick home, whatever it is, even the experiences, the things that are intangible, that are not yet in your archive, your photo album of memory. It's hard to mourn those, but having some certainty of your vision and working for them, fighting for them as though they are already in your life and now just slipping away through inaction. That's another perspective. The third part of the eulogy is the love letter, which we spoke of on one of the earlier days of the 5 days of defiance. What would you tell? Like, you got nothing else left to lose. You're already dead in this eulogy. What do you champion? What are you a mouthpiece for? What is the simple, earnest thing you would plead for humanity to either do or stop doing, to realign them to their own humanity? And then the last part, simple 4-part, is to somatically take in the privilege of being alive in this moment. Imagine that ghost of you can gently settle down into your body and take a last few breaths, a last few sensations. Maybe your loved ones come and kiss you on the face, and you know that you're about to detach and go off and go into, well, whatever is beyond the threshold for you in your understanding of the universe. But in those moments, you actually get to settle down into your body, and they're there, they're squeezing your hand, they're kissing your face, they're thanking you. And you really get to take in what it's like to be subjectively here in a body and really just savor it. Savor it, savor it. I remember doing a burial ritual and I got buried under the sand and breathed through a snorkel and feeling the weight on my chest of not being able to breathe freely. And then afterwards, coming out of the earth, the pleasure and luxury of just the simplicity of breathing. Oh, wow. I thought I would never take it for granted again. But in the time that has happened since, I've definitely lost a little bit of that savoring of every breath. Good reminder. So 4 parts. You might want to write these down. The first one is position yourself as a child or someone that had a huge hope for the future, and remember what you knew you were going to do or experience, and write that down. Then go right to the end and know through memory something that's not yet happened, but is going to be a highlight of your life. Then come into a message or a transmission you'd love to give as a love letter to humanity when there's no reason to say anything but the exact truth. And then finally take in with such huge relishing, right here, right now, ghost in a body, feeling the luxury and privilege of breathing, and then feeling the spaciousness of all that you can do in any direction you can go from this moment now. So I won't impose too much. I'm going to play the sound now. We're going to go through this process for the next 5 or 6 minutes. I might drop a word just to make sure you're hitting all the different points, but ultimately it's up to you. Guide yourself well. This is ultimately, of course, your own initiation, and you're calling yourself into it because you've heard the call to adventure, and you know this is a rites of passage that will help you strip away and evolve into a truer form of you, which can better serve what is happening in your life now and what's to come. We already know it's on its way. So thank you to Children of the Drone for this song. Untitled. So in phase one, feeling into the beauty of your certainty as a child of what's to come. Now moving into phase two, at the end, looking back at something that is yet to happen, but ends up being a moment of such truth, alignment, and accomplishment, a life trophy. Now for the third phase, feeling into your love letter to humanity. Feeling in, what is your voice? You can even speak it out aloud. What would you say? What would you urge? What is the innate poetry that you would gift with your greatness, eloquently urging humanity back into itself? Once you have spoken that, or at least cast the intention for what will become that part of the eulogy, I welcome you into a state of sensation and gratitude, coming into the body to drink in the tactile nature of the elements and the luxury and privilege of breath. Thank you, children of the drone. Thank you for everyone who took the time to feel into the unsung songs and then dared to sing them, and then went to the extraordinary length of recording them into some digital format and then distributed them copyright free for anyone to use to then ripple out, which then became a part of our experience here today. To give, to give, to give. And there would be no way for them to know that they would their feature on an Atlas Talisman free session. And how can any of us know where our creations go? And it's also being okay with not receiving the award, the acknowledgement, because so many things will obviously happen after we are dead. But before then, we can create, create, create. And we know it's not about me here teaching you anything. It's about me having confidence that you know, and you using me as the mirror to look into your eyes and say, I know. We do, as humanity, know our way. And that is why the injustice of what is currently being perpetuated feels so foreign, because it's not of us. The hate and the division and the confusion that we might fear when we cast our gaze on someone from our species that is so abhorrent to us and we want to segregate away from. Follow that thread, that lie. Because I deeply believe there's a part of us that longs to connect, that longs to be the generous one. Are we happy with how we're being in life? Are we being the version of ourselves that we would want to include in that eulogy? Or are we allocating responsibility externally? Oh, they're making me be an asshole. I can't be nice to them because of this. What? You're letting someone else convince you to not be yourself? That is the greatness, to love in spite of all invitations to hate. To be you despite however not you everything else is. That is your uniqueness. If you want to prove that you're unique and different, then be different and be you while everything else is not you. And I understand that there is a connection and integration, but part of that integration is not sameness. It is in the unique differences, which can then be the wheel of co-creation. I can do things you can't. You can do things I can't. Thank you for doing what you do. I'll follow what I do. And I'll really enjoy it along the way. Yeah. Let us normalize the weirdness of humanity. Allow yourself to be ritualistic. Human beings are extremely superstitious. We're extremely magical. You can frame that as any kind of label, but there is a music in this place. Not because I put it there, not because we invented violins and guitars and drums. We mimicked, we created analogies of the music and life. If you feel back into your DNA and your ancestry, that's in you. The culmination of songs and dances. That's part of you. It's what you came from. And if we're alienated by some normality of modernity, where you're meant to just sit with a suit and tie or a dress and you're not meant to touch on the bus and you're meant to just not cause a fuss and talk in appropriate tones and only say the pre-designated topics. No, no more canceling the curious and the outliers. No more division between right and left, right and wrong. When we can be so righteous about our rightness that we would ironically isolate the others, which is who we're purportedly trying to stand up for. Just view the irony of the silly illusion. It is almost in its insanity that it gets its way in behind the observation, because it can't be looked at in the eye, because it is a shadow weaving around occlusion of misinformation and misinterpretation and own projection and not enough exposing ourselves, all our own avoidance. All of that is what allows it to continue. But we know, because we feel ourselves, and there's a natural desire to flow, just as there's a natural desire to breathe. And I'm okay to beat the drum. I'm okay to be a flowing river that you can come and dip a toe into. But this is day 5 of 5. There's no more days after this. It closes and I go off and do what I was doing before this. But it's recorded. So I hope you beat your own drum. And I know you do. I just want to be very clear. I'm not giving you something you don't already have. But I worked a way around a lot of the traps. Sometimes it was going straight through them. Sometimes it was by being a trickster and not doing the right thing and ended up getting away scot-free. Do I feel bad about it? No. I really like life in the way that I live. But I'm going to use it and give it back. Give back a bit of that glimpse of trickster freedom. Give some of the perspective I have from being alleviated from the burden of what many are under, to come back to a more objective perspective and say, it doesn't matter about me. I'm looking at the system that we live in. And it can be done in a more naturally inclusive and integrated way through biomimicry and understanding symbiosis and living a life by ideals such as sharing and giving and receiving, facing, contributing. And anything that's telling me I can't play, I call bullshit on it. Anything that's telling me I should stay away, I call bullshit on it. I show up. Anything that's telling me that I don't belong, I call bullshit on it, because you and I don't own this place. Nature owns nature, and it gave herself to us. The owner gave it. Same with God or whatever is up there around us or through us. It gave sentience. It is of illumination. It didn't put itself in a book or in a particular golden candlestick or lock itself behind some big gilded door. How dare we announce that we own any of these things, whether it be God or nature or love or value. And so we soften and we come to a truth which cannot be put in a cage. That's through breath and self-realization, being the autodidactic navigator of the unknown. And that's where it becomes poetic, because nature is poetic. And the more we can get out of the way, the more perfect it sounds. Not because of the perfection in the way that I speak. It's not about at all what I'm saying. It's about how you're interpreting it. It's about how that resonance gets translated from a potential in me through this physical body, coming out as a song, reverberating through this microphone, coming down through all the interconnected network of the digital and technical, coming out of the speaker or whatever is now mimicking me. How amazing is that? Your speaker sounds like me, but it's not me, but it's doing a good job at sounding like me. Then it comes through the air and then it reverberates and turns you into an instrument. And through your understanding of language, you have a lot of symbols and analogies and significances that you attribute a meaning to this, and you weave it back into your own subjective universe and you create something. And then it's up to you to feel it, to pull apart the bullshit, pull apart my ego. Please pull apart my ego. If it's been getting in the way from the transmission, please shove that shit out the side. I'm very sorry. It's something I'm working through. And know you, because you know you are the unblinking witness of this existence. Thank you. This has been Open World Theatre. I am Atlas Talisman. We will die in this form one day. And until then, we dream and we weave it into what can be shared so deeply, deeply, deeply in ways I cannot express. Thank you. Thank you for playing.